Welcome to the Halliwell Manor. I'm Max.
And I'm Tina.
And we're here to discuss Season 1, Episode 16 of Charmed. Which Prue is it anyway?
Yeah. Some of these titles.
Yeah. Which is too bad because it's a solid episode. It's not, great. But I think it's a pretty solid episode.
It is a solid episode. It, in my opinion, suffers from the fact that it's right before an episode I cannot wait to talk about.
Honestly, it does kind of suffer from being sort of in the midst of a bunch of really good episodes of Charmed.
Yeah, I mean, Is There a Woogie in the House is an episode that, again, terrible title.
Terrible title.
Great episode.
Great episode.
This episode was directed by John Baring, who also directed what I think is universally understood to be the best episode of Charmed.
Go on.
Morality Bites.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah, fair. That is, I think, generally accepted to be the best episode of Charmed.
And this episode was written by Javier Grillo Marcos, who also...
Like the king of Season 1 here.
I know, right? He did the story for Feats of Clay.
Ugh.
I know, right? But he wrote Dead Man Dating.
Oh.
Yeah, he also wrote a couple of groaners. I was flipping ahead to see what he wrote that we're going to get to later. Mm-hmm. And speaking of terrible titles, She's a Man, Baby, a Man.
That was kind of in the F.U. Shannon Doherty run of episodes later.
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, there's kind of a run of episodes later that are reflecting some issues with Shannon Doherty. There's the one where she gets turned into a man. There's the one where she gets turned into a dog.
Isn't there one where she's invisible?
I was about to say, I was going to make a joke about there being one where she's invisible and can't talk, but I think there is one where she becomes invisible.
But this episode...
Yeah, this episode is the opposite of that because we are going to have 3 Shannon Dohertys.
Yeah.
So, do you think she did this spell wrong, or do you think the person who wrote the spell was just kind of messing with whoever was going to perform it? Because I feel like the spell does not do what it was advertised to do.
I forget what it was advertised to do.
It's supposed to, I think it's increase your strength 3-fold, and... if you're writing a spell down that says that it's going to increase your strength 3-fold, you don't go into that thinking, oh, it will make 2 magical copies of me.
Also, they're not really copies. What it essentially does is split Prue into her id, ego, and superego. And only her superego is quote-unquote real.
I mean, we're talking id, ego, and superego in very loose terms. I'm thinking more her angry and horny sides.
Well, no. It's her conservative side and her angry, horny side. I said only her superego is considered real. Only her ego is considered real. Well, we'll talk about it.
Yes. So, the episode opens with a boxer boxing in a boxing ring, but he's boxing too much, everyone.
Too much boxing?
Too much boxing. And unbeknownst to him, a man is lurking in the shadows to watch. This is a very oddly lit gym. The guy's all in the shadows except for his eyes.
It's a dramatically lit gym. Also, it's lit so that from overhead, you get a very dramatic shot of the boxers.
Yeah, I really do like the composition of this opening scene.
Yes. Okay. You know what? I'm being too hard on it because, yes, from above, it's an amazing shot. But in my head, the nitpicky part in my head is going, who's that lighting for? There's nobody who can see that other than the camera.
Yes, this is a gym that's lit for the cameras that are,
in a place where there are no people.
Yes. So... the boxer boxes the guy he's boxing too hard, and the coach needs to step in and make him stop. He gets sent to the showers, where he's confronted by the man from the shadows, who's got a real mullet thing going on.
Yeah.
I think I know what both of our time freeze is going to be for this episode.
It's business up front and evil in the back.
So, The man tells the boxer that he's been watching him for a while, and he's got a real killer instinct because apparently he beat someone to death in the ring. How is boxing legal? That's so bizarre to me. That you can just murder someone as long as, it's in a ring and a lot of people are looking at you when you do it.
I don't know that happens a lot outside of TV and movies.
I have to imagine it happens at least sometimes, though, right?
Honestly, I don't know. It's not... So this, the mullet-haired man takes out a crystal sword, which he's going to use to steal this boxer's killer instinct. So he stabs the boxer to death, thereby taking his killer instinct.
It seems like you already had enough killer instinct. Yeah.
That's what I would argue, right?
What with the killing and all.
Right.
So, God, there's a lot of artsy shots here. We got back to the manor, and it has this kind of slow downward swoop from the chandelier as Piper and Prue enter the house to see... I guess now that they've brought in Grams, they can start mentioning her more. I feel like their mom kind of came up more than Grams, but here there is a statue that Grams had that was in storage, but they couldn't afford storage anymore because,
Well, I mean, I think they just decided it wasn't worth it to keep renting out a unit when they have a giant house and just the three of them living in it.
Yeah, Piper mentions that Prue's complaining about the giant statue, and Piper's like, look, I'm not paying for storage anymore. So I guess Piper... I can see Piper being the one who takes care of that sort of thing. It's weird because Prue's like the mom of the family, but I feel like Piper handles a lot of the more practical stuff just around.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Prue thinks it's a really ugly statue. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's like pseudo-Grecian.
Yeah. And Piper's like, look, if you don't like it, why don't you just move it into the basement with your powers? And Prue tries to, and nothing happens. And Piper's like, yeah... It took 6 of Phoebe's bouncer friends.
So Phoebe has a lot of bouncer friends.
God, I'd like to hear more about that.
Right?
I'm sorry, it took 8 of Phoebe's bouncer friends. And Prue's like, my powers are still growing, so someday I'll be able to move it to Timbuktu. And Piper's like, yeah, okay, whatever.
And until then, Piper would like to emphasize something we've never said before, that this house is a democracy and we vote on what is going to happen, and she and Phoebe have voted that the statue stays there.
The statue that their dead grandmother left them.
Well, I mean, I don't think she left them that so much as she left it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess she just died and all of her stuff went to them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, come on, it was probably... Well, I don't know how important it was to her.
She had it in a storage unit.
Yeah, point. Meanwhile, Phoebe is kickboxing in the living room because... she needs an active thing to do, so they're going to kind of shoehorn her in kickboxing now.
Well, I mean, fair. Premonition isn't really a fighting move. She has this, really weirdly advanced fighting dummy.
Yeah, I remember seeing those everywhere for a while in the 90s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is the only place I've ever seen it. It, lights up when you kick it and, lets you know if you did it right or not.
Yeah. And Prue's like, so what's with that? And Phoebe's like, oh, I'm sick of being the one who's always getting abducted by demons, So I'm learning to kickbox, which, fair, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
Honestly, it seems like, I don't know, carrying a knife everywhere you go might be more effective than this, but...
No, you still have to know how to use it. If you're talking about self-defense, a weapon, if you don't know how to use it, is just something that somebody's going to take from you.
Point. But Phoebe seems to have done a pretty good job just with improvised stuff so far.
Yeah, think how well she'll do when she's trained.
I mean, not very well because every episode of Charmed ends basically the same way. She should learn how to, talk really fast.
She should learn some offensive spells.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't need an offensive power, you're a witch. You just need, potions.
Yeah, I feel like later seasons actually does... sort of stuff with this, but you'd think that they do more, not power of 3 spells per se, but just
spells?
Yeah, just defensive spoken spells.
Are you a witch or not?
Yeah. So, Prue is very condescending about the whole kickboxing thing, and Phoebe's like, oh yeah? Well, come at me. And Prue just telekinetically shoves the dummy into Phoebe.
I like how Phoebe's like, that's not fair, and Prue's like, yeah, the way demons aren't fair, that also powers.
So Phoebe grabs her arm and twists it behind her back, which triggers a premonition of Prue getting the crap stabbed out of her.
Yeah, with the crystal sword with the mullet guy that we saw earlier.
Yeah. So, it's not great. But at least you're getting a heads up about it, so, you know.
Phoebe very dramatically says, I saw you die. Like, she hasn't stopped people from dying when she had premonitions about them so many times already.
Yeah.
That's the point of your premonition.
You should be worried if you don't have premonitions about her. Look what happened to John Cho.
Right? Also, like, it's weird since we all know that
Prue dies.
But we cut from that to credits.
God,
and
it's still so weird, you know, a show having actual credits.
I know. I'm actually watching The Good Fight right now.
Mm-hmm.
And The Good Fight has a credit sequence that's, like, so long. It's like a full minute long. And sometimes they play it so late into the episode. I was watching an episode and we were like 17 minutes in, and when the credits started, I'm like, at that point you can't play the credits. That's like your act 1 out. It's not the time for credits.
Yeah, I don't get that with modern shows. I mean, there's some cool, like, Orange is the New Black had a really cool opening credits thing, but it also went for 7 million years. Like, they had to institute a skip opening credits thing after the first season of Orange is the New Black because of how long it took to get to the actual episode.
That's funny. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that is right when we got the skip intro button, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same for God, I think it was Weeds, where it had a cool opening sequence, but
yeah, the Tiki Taki boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weeds and God, what was the other one? It was the one with what's her face, where she had dissociative identity disorder.
United States of Terra.
Yeah, like I love the opening credits for United States of Terra, but it takes so long.
So, I already told you, Max, this, but I'm going to tell our listeners. I was doing the interactive Kimmy Schmidt that Netflix came out with a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hit the skip intro button, the guy who sings it comes out and yells at you and then plays the extended version.
That's pretty great.
It actually was. I actually really got into it. And then when they're done with the extended version, he comes back and he's like, see? It was a great song. You're welcome. But Charmed.
So,
Ooh. I would love an interactive Charmed. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be great. I'm assuming Charmed Classic and not New Charmed.
Yes. I mean, we couldn't really get it now, though, because
everyone's
20 years older than they were when they did Charmed.
Yeah.
I guess it could be like a...
I'm sure Holly Marie Combs would still be up for it.
I know she'd still be up for it. She made it very clear that she would still be up for doing Charmed when they started talking about New Charmed, and she was so upset about not being invited back for New Charmed.
I mean, that's not really how reboots work. Like,
I know.
It's
well, it's because she didn't want them to do a reboot. She wanted them to do a sequel series.
Yeah, which, I mean, I get, she's been in stuff, but she's, like, Charmed was her big thing. So I can see her wanting to be more involved with New Charmed, but, like, you kind of just have to let stuff go after a while.
I mean, she's obviously still really invested in Charmed.
Yeah. Which is nice. I
mean,
it's good that she's that invested in something she's in, and it's not like, you know, there are some people who don't like to talk about their most iconic projects.
Well, so, you know that watching a TV show regularly, you get the same serotonin hit in your brain seeing these people as you do when you see Friends.
Mm-hmm.
Humans who are your friends, not the TV show Friends.
Yes.
Yeah, the friends from Friends give you the serotonin hit that you get from Friends, right? So even though you consciously know it's a TV show, like a part of your brain, like a lizard part of your brain is like, oh, it's my friends. I'm so happy to see them. So whenever you find out that they're all friends in real life, or
it feels nice.
Yeah, or that they really loved doing the show, it ups that serotonin hit. Mm. I'm listening to Office Ladies podcast right now, and the way that Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey talk about how they were actually friends in real life and how they all loved each other in real life, it's just like, oh, it makes me feel so good now. When I watch The Office, I get even more serotonin.
You get the impression that Holly Marie Combs and Alyssa Milano really got along well, because, like, they still interact a lot on social media and stuff, and they were in that one episode of Grey's Anatomy we've talked about a bunch. Not so much the others.
Well, Shannon Doherty and Holly Marie Combs were very close.
Mm.
In fact, Shannon Doherty insisted that they hire Holly Marie Combs.
Yeah.
But Shannon Doherty and Alyssa Milano did not get along at all. They reportedly hated each other. And Holly Marie Combs was so close to Alyssa Milano. And then, after Shannon Doherty went out and insisted they hire Holly Marie Combs, she didn't do anything when they fired Shannon Doherty. You have to wonder what kind of strain that put on their relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is conjecture after the fact.
Oh, 100% it's conjecture.
Like, honestly, I would love to see a documentary about what happened with Charmed, because there's so much behind-the-scenes stuff.
You want, like, one of those Lifetime unauthorized movies, like the one for Full House? That...
God, no. If they could do it competently, the one for Full House it's amazing because it's this, like, weirdly sanitized tell-all, and you can't do that. It's like, oh, did you know that Bob Saget swears a lot in real life, and the cast all did whippets once?
Oh, no, it's so incredibly sanitized. There's so much stuff that actually happened. And I would be really interested in a dramatization of the transition of doing a show about 3 stand-up comedians who live in a house together, and how that evolved and turned into Full House.
Yeah, because the story's really interesting. They weren't willing to actually talk about it at all.
Well, that's why the Saved by the Bell one is better, because the Saved by the Bell one is based on Dustin Diamond's tell-all. But the problem is, Dustin Diamond's tell-all has a unreliable narrator problem.
Yeah, like, it's all about how everyone hated him and they were all super mean people who were, having orgies and doing drugs all the time and not
he wasn't invited to.
Which, I'm like, doubt, but,
You doubt that Dustin Diamond wasn't invited? I wouldn't invite Dustin Diamond.
I doubt that those things happened. I'm willing to bet that, just no one would sleep with him or do drugs with him. So when he did his tell-all.
Yeah, that sounds more accurate.
Yeah. So, Charmed.
Charmed! The show we are here to discuss.
So we get a lot of sort of establishing shots of the house and the kitchen. It's a really nice house. I don't think we've brought up enough.
It is. It's a great house. Phoebe is in the kitchen trying to draw the crystal sword that she saw in her vision so that she can figure out from the Book of Shadows, what it was, who they're going to fight.
I don't know why, but I really like I don't normally notice this, but I really like the videography in this episode.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of panning shots, and there's a lot of just slight angle work that I think really works. Like, I don't think I really think about camera work that much, but it's really good in this episode.
Yeah.
So, Piper comes into the kitchen. She's like, drawing swords, huh? And Phoebe's like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out which one kills Prue so we can find out who owns it and stop them.
Yeah. And then Prue comes into the kitchen and Phoebe's like, why are you dressed for work? I thought you were going to stay here so that you could not die. And Prue says she has to go to work because Claire called and told her she has to go to work to get this big account.
I thought Claire wasn't going to be her boss anymore after last episode.
She also says, I've worked so hard to get Claire to trust me with something big like this. She's from the bank. She should be deferring to your expertise, if not your authority.
Also, last episode, she had a big client come have dinner at your house. I mean, it went horribly, but...
Yeah, right. Oh, maybe that's what she means. Maybe she means I needed to get Claire to think I was competent again after last week.
Note how that was in no way her job, but...
Yeah.
So, Prue's sisters are very big on her not leaving the house because they don't want her to get stabbed. And Prue's like, you said that it was a guy who killed me in your premonition, and the client I'm meeting with is a woman, so clearly nothing is going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not going to see anyone on the way there. There won't be anyone else in the building. There's no chance that this is a trap and it's someone else.
And Piper's like, okay, fine, but will you at least promise to come straight home from work? And Prue's like...
What am I, 5?
Yeah, Prue's like, fine, if it'll stop you from complaining at me. Which, oh no, your sisters don't want you to die, Prue. What monsters.
I mean, they are being... You can't just not live your life every time Phoebe has a vision.
Honestly, they should just come with her to work.
Yeah. Who's gonna care? There's no one who works there.
This episode, Prue has an assistant.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, from out of nowhere. So we cut from that to an establishing shot of Buckland's where we get the contractually obligated shot of a streetcar.
Mm.
And then we're in Buckland's.
So, Claire is filling in Prue on the new client. It's sort of the same thing as last episode.
Prue, as you know.
As you know, Bob. So this woman's family has more money than God, and they're all super old. So, they're going to start dropping like flies soon. Same thing as with the professor from, last episode. This woman, by the way, looks so aggressively 90s.
Yeah, she's wearing like a white business suit with gold buttons, which is, it's like a Talbot special. It is very 90s. And her hair is like a bob, but it's like a big, full, voluminous bob. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's like, well, before we hire Buckland's, I want to make sure you know your business, Prue. I need you to come with me to my family's warehouse alone with no one else. And Prue's like, well, she is a woman, so I should be safe. And clearly there's not going to be any third parties at this warehouse. It's fine.
God. It's called Gift of Fear, Prue. Prue even thinks about it for a second. She's like, oh, a warehouse in the warehouse district away from other people? Yeah, okay.
It'll be fine.
Sure, whatever you say.
So we cut to Quake where...
It's inventory day.
I don't get why this subplot's here. It's fine. It takes up like 3 minutes of the episode.
They gotta give Piper something to do.
Apparently.
They literally couldn't think of anything to give... They literally couldn't think of anything for Piper to do, so they're like, I don't know, just have her count the glasses at Quake.
See, this is why I think Prue is the main character of season 1. We kind of talked about how Piper was getting all of the strong plots for a while, and she was, but now she's counting glasses. And, God, she had that horrible romantic subplot last episode with that guy who was a jerk. I guess the Woogie Man was really more of a Phoebe episode, but I still feel like Prue is kind of the main character of season 1 at this point.
I don't even remember what Piper did last. Oh, right. Yeah, she had a whole romance subplot.
Yeah. And, God, what did she do the week before that when Prue was helping out that kid? Piper's kind of been falling into the margins a lot recently.
Yeah.
We have our baby here if you hear any baby noises. Just a heads up.
So, Phoebe goes to Quake to tell Piper that she found the sword in the Book of Shadows. Apparently, it's this family, and they have this sword, and they use it to start wars. They're like immortals.
They're like an order of evil knights, and they're immortal. They're immortals, but their immortality is tied up with their swords, and
they're gods of war.
Yeah.
Or like embodiments of war.
Yeah, they're like horsemen of war, or I wouldn't say gods. They're more agents of chaos. They inspire war. They incite it with their presence. But
they're like war from Good Omens.
Yeah, but there's a bunch of them, and they're usually dudes. And
also, as long as they have the sword, the crystal swords, they're invulnerable.
And one of the Halliwell's ancestors managed to depower one by telekinetically throwing the sword really far away. And once one of them has been dishonored, they need to get their honor back through murder.
Sure.
Which, apparently they have to kill a bunch of people that represent their station in order to get their power back.
So that's why he had to kill the guy who had the killer instinct.
Yeah. Which is the only bit of it we see. So this war starting dude with the sword is after... It feels weird that they had him, like, I need to regain my killer instinct, so I have to kill a boxer just to establish that I use my sword to kill people.
Yeah, like, who is that boxer? He was just some guy.
Yeah. It would have made more sense if he was just after Prue.
I mean, they could have had him killed with some random blonde witch at the beginning.
Honestly, I feel like this could have been... they could have kind of looped this into the Grams thing, like the Halliwell, or Warren, who took his sword from him telekinetically, had it with the family, and it was in the storage unit with the statue, and, like...
They even established their storage unit!
Yeah.
Or they could have just made it that the Halliwell that a Halliwell had been the one who dishonored him, so he had to kill a Halliwell to regain his honor.
I mean, that is kind of the case here.
Yeah, but what'd the boxer have to do with anything?
Yeah, maybe a boxer messed him up after the Halliwell threw this...
It was a boxing Halliwell.
No. The Great Witch family, the Halliwells, teamed up with the Great Boxing family. So the Halliwell moved the sword away from him, and then the boxer's ancestor punched him in the face.
There you go. That's what happened.
So Prue is down at the storage units to...
The warehouse, not Graham's storage unit, which would make sense, but the warehouse where this client has all of her stuff.
Yeah. And you know what else she has there?
What?
A brother. A brother who's really big on stabbing people.
Yeah. Okay, so she shows up and, first she's playing innocent.
Yeah, she's like, oh, I hope I didn't scare you when I mysteriously appeared from behind you.
And then she's like...
Also blonde.
Oh, yes. We didn't mention. We should have mentioned. Also, she's like, let me point out this antique stock. And just go ahead and put your arms right in this antique stock.
Dear Lord, Prue. Gift of fear.
Right. So then the demon shows up and he locks Prue's hands into the stock. And he says that he assumes that Prue needs to move her hands to use her power. But it turns out, no, she focuses her powers through her eyes, not her hands. So she undoes the stock and then...
Yeah, because her ancestor, Brianna, which kind of breaks the everyone has P names, which the Halliwells established later, but,
Yeah.
She focused her power through the hands, which is why they think the hand thing is going to work. But Prue focuses it through her eyes for now.
Yes.
I don't get why they change it up later. Like, later they change it up so that she focuses it through her hands. And then there's a scene later where someone stops her from using her powers by binding her hands. And I'm like, can she not do it through her eyes anymore?
That person hadn't watched this episode. But she throws the sister into the wall, and then she takes a hatchet and hatchets the brother in the chest. But, he's got the sword, so he's immortal. So he just looks down at the hatchet like, you just messed up my suit.
Then Prue runs and he throws the sword at her because apparently we're back in Once Upon a Time.
Where you throw swords. But Prue gets out, she gets to her car, and she takes off. And the brother tells the sister that they are not going to pursue her because she's headed home. And home is where she has the power of 3. So, they don't want to...
They're just going to wait for her to go to work and kill her there.
Which apparently she'll just keep doing, even though there are demons after her. Or I guess in this case they're mortals, not demons. They're just immortal mortals.
Well, the guy... I guess probably the sister is too, right? I mean...
Immortal?
Yeah, if she's his sister.
I think she's unaging, but not immortal. I think she can be killed, but she doesn't age.
So Phoebe pulls open the Book of Shadows. She finds Brianna. I do really like the thing with the Book of Shadows also being kind of an ancestry thing.
Yeah, it's like a family Bible.
Yeah.
She says Brianna was their great-great-great-great aunt.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe she wasn't in the line of women who have P names.
Oh, God. Do you remember Graham's? I think it's Pamela, but I'm not sure.
No, I don't think it's Pamela.
Let me Google it real quick.
Okay.
Penny Halliwell.
Okay.
Huh. No Pamelas.
I'm sure there are Pamelas somewhere.
It makes sense that New Charmed pivoted to M names.
There are a lot more M names.
Yeah.
I always felt really bad for Phoebe that, they didn't even try to find a name that has the same sound.
Like Pamela.
Like Pamela. Or Paige.
Yeah. They're just like,
Good enough. Please don't name your child Phoebo.
So she, this ancestor of theirs, Brianna. Piana?
No.
She also she also had telekinesis, but unlike Prue, she channeled it through her hands. And there's this great image of her doing like witch hands at the guy and the.
I was gonna say, speaking of Once Upon a Time, these are some real Once Upon a Time level illustrations.
It's weird because normally the Book of Shadows has pretty good illustrations, but this is not great. I love her doing the like. She's basically doing Thriller hands.
Yes, that's exactly what she's doing.
And like, the text wrapping's not great in this, but she used her power to throw the sword miles and miles away.
Hundreds of miles away, because anything closer and he can just call it back to him. So Prue's going to have to be strong enough to throw the sword hundreds and hundreds of miles away. It's kind of a ridiculous plot.
Yeah.
This is a really tortured contrivance to get us to having 3 Prues.
It really is. So...
Speaking of that contrivance.
Yes. Phoebe also found the spell of multiplicity. A spell that will multiply your power.
You're right, that's a very misleading spell.
Yeah. And there's kind of a weird thing where Piper's like, I don't think this is a good idea. And Phoebe says, why? Because it's mine, which is not really a dynamic she's had with Piper. It's a dynamic she's had with Prue.
Well, it's also weird because Piper's like, we have the power of 3. You don't need to increase your powers. But number 1, that's not true because their plan involves throwing the sword. Number 2, this guy's not a demon, so they can't banish him with a power of 3 spell. And number 3, this is just so transparently a way to, again, get to there being multiple Prues.
I mean, if they could freeze him, they could just freeze him, take the sword, and then drive really far away.
Get on an airplane.
Yeah. Like, come on. Also, I feel like this episode is kind of predicated on the sisters not being familiar with, like, video games or Greek mythology. Because, spoiler alert for the end of the episode, it turns out that he can be killed with his own sword, and that feels like such a basic thing.
Also, that
no one's tried this before.
Yeah, you're invulnerable except to your own sword. Sorry, you're not invulnerable. As I mentioned earlier in the episode with Phoebe, if you try to go at an attacker with a weapon and they're better than you, you've just armed your attacker.
Yeah. Like, it's just weird that no one's tried. This guy's been alive for hundreds of years, and I mean, Brianna's first instinct was to throw the sword hundreds of miles away, not stab him with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Rumpelstiltskin thing. Like, if someone has a magic weapon...
Try it on them first before you try other magical stuff. Yeah.
So, as you said earlier in the episode...
This is the episode where they decided to use democracy. Yeah. So, Prue's like, okay, well, let's vote whether I do this spell or not. And Prue and Phoebe vote that she does the spell, and Piper just has to suck it.
Yeah. They needed to establish this. And Prue just starts reading the spell as she's walking up the stairs, and it's... blessed be, multiply my power by 3. So the meter's not super great.
There's often a problem with meter in these spells. But she's barely in the attic. I mean, she must have had time to just walk over the threshold in the attic when there's a loud crash and Phoebe and Piper run upstairs to see if Prue is okay, just in time to see her literally split into 3 parts.
Yeah, she's kneeling on the ground. I guess she walked upstairs, put the book on the ground, and then kneeled in front of it to finish the spell.
Uh-huh.
And she split into 3 Prues. Ah!
Okay, so later on this episode, they're going to color code the Prues with sweaters to tell which Prue is which.
It's a good thing sweater sets are Prue's thing.
It is. But I also just want to point out that she's already coded with her hair. The good conservative Prue has the hair pushed all the way back behind her ears. The normal Prue has her hair like normally, like the way she normally wears it. And the sexy angry Prue has her hair like all the way down, falling into her face. It seemed really funny to me.
So, 3 Prues. They really hammered in. They have Phoebe count the Prues.
Yeah. Phoebe's like, wait, multiply your power by 3.
1,
2, 3. Oh! Anyway, then we cut to the next day when the real problem with this is that Prue's taking up all the bathrooms.
So, okay. According to this now, we know that the Halliwell house has 3 bathrooms.
Actually, I think it has 2 bathrooms.
Mm.
It has an upstairs bathroom and a downstairs bathroom. Prue is in both of those bathrooms. And then conservative Prue is being polite and also is already dressed and ready to go.
Mm. So, the interesting thing about this, unlike most clone stories, is that the clone Prues are aware that they're clones. They're aware that they will disappear when the job that real Prue needs them for is done, and they're totally fine with it.
Yes. And so this Prue, the conservative Prue, tells Phoebe and Piper that she's not the one who cast the spell, but she does have all of Prue's memories. We talked about this in Farscape last week in our Welcome to the Uncharted Territories podcast. Like, what makes up a human?
Yeah. She talks about, she's like, well, I'm a clone, but I have all Prue's memories and emotions, and I react to things the way Prue would react to, so I am in essence Prue, if not in actuality.
Although, she doesn't actually react to things the way Prue would, I feel like I need to point out.
Yes. So, she cheerfully tells them that the house is out of hot water and then skips off. And Piper's like, this is like the Parent Trap with a B cup.
That's a terrible line. I hate that line.
Also, how?
Just because there's 3 of them. There aren't even 3 in the Parent Trap. There's 2.
Yeah.
I hate that line.
The premise of your joke is flawed. So, sexy, angry Prue wants to know if her skirt is sexy and angry enough, and conservative Prue's like, it's fine.
Yeah, I like that they're all wearing a black tank top and black skirt, but sexy, angry Prue is wearing, like, a tiny, tight skirt, and conservative Prue is wearing, like, a pencil skirt, and regular Prue is wearing one of those really 90s skirts that, like, fell in a really unflattering place on the calf.
So, Phoebe decides to color code the Prues by giving them different sweaters. Real Prue gets a black sweater. One of the Prues gets a pink, and the other one gets a blue.
Conservative gets a pink, and sexy gets a blue.
Sexy, angry.
You're right. You know, we should just say horny, because horny is sexy, angry, right?
Hangry.
Wait, no, that means something else. Horngry?
Horngry.
Yeah, Horngry Prue. Although the captions just title them Clone A and Clone B, which they missed an opportunity to classify them conservative clone and horngry clone.
Call us Netflix. So, apparently Prue has an assistant who's already on job stuff. So, one of the Prues suggests, hey, why don't we just find Gabriel through, the information his family gave Bucklands, and then the 3 of us can just, team up and throw the sword really far away, and then the clones will disappear.
And it turns out that in this episode, Prue has an assistant who's already working on that. She's already going through the database to figure out who Gabriel and his sister really are.
Huh.
I guess she has an assistant that we've never seen before, and I believe we'll never see again.
Sure, why not? So, Piper's like, are you sure that the 3 of you are up to the task? And luckily there was something that,
Yeah, if only we had established earlier something that Prue couldn't do alone that maybe she can do with her 2 clones.
So the clones all kind of take hands, but not really because they don't have the technology for that. They all hold their hands over one another.
Oof, yeah, it's some rough green screen.
And they telekinetically throw the statue out the window.
I mean, they just lift it up and put it back down.
Yeah. Which doesn't really demonstrate much.
She couldn't lift it before, now she can.
Yeah. But, I mean, if they really wanted to prove how strong they were, they'd throw that statue hundreds of miles away.
I guess that's true.
So the doorbell rings, and it's Andy, who is contractually obligated to be here. I know. We're not huge fans of Andy.
Yeah, actually contractually obligated to be here, not like the joke I made about the streetcar earlier.
Yes.
Because he's front credited, so he has to be in every episode.
Yeah.
And conservative Prue answers the door, and Andy's like, hey, Prue, I'm still in love with you even though weird stuff is happening, so I just wanted to know if you wanted to go to that concert we bought tickets for back when we were still banging. And conservative Prue is like, oh, I absolutely do, because it's the conservative part of me that's in love with you, I guess. I guess that's what's going on.
Sure.
So Andy gives her the tickets to hold on to.
Yeah, and he's like, do you want to see this concert as a friend? Because as a friend, I'd love to see a concert with you, and then maybe we could, have some friend sex afterwards. And she's like, that sounds nice.
Meanwhile, Horngry Prue has picked up a phone call, and it turns out that it's Claire who is demanding that she get to Buckland's right now. Which, on the one hand, yes, that is her job. She should probably get to Buckland's right now. But on the other hand, she's the only one who works there. I feel like she has more leverage than she acts like she does.
Seriously. Because apparently the client is really mad that Prue wouldn't let him stab her. And Claire's like, you go, you apologize to that client, and you let him stab you. Do you know how much money we could make from this?
Okay, it's weird. I understand that Prue is, like, not wanting to reveal that she's a witch, so she can't just say, hey, the client that you sent me to a warehouse with, her brother tried to stab me. But on the other hand, I feel like you can say that without bringing the supernatural into it.
Yeah. Or, like, hey, Claire, why don't you talk to literally anyone else who works at this auction house?
No one else does.
Okay, point.
So they decide that the Prues have to split up, but two of them are going to go to Buckland's and do, like, a comedy routine where one of them hides and one of them is there. Because two of them can fight Gabriel off even though they can't throw the sword hundreds of miles.
Why not?
I don't know. They need all three.
I mean, maybe not hundreds of miles, but probably pretty far.
And the other Prue will stay with Piper because, she has an active power.
Yes, and could protect her. Again, this seems like the sort of thing where you could just have Piper show up, freeze him, and then...
Well, okay, so Prue even says that. She's like, hey, other Prue will go with Piper. And honestly, worst case scenario, Piper freezes Gabriel and everyone runs away. And why isn't that plan A? That should be plan A.
So Phoebe and Piper are like, yeah, we're not big on this plan, and we should vote on it. And they vote against it, and all three of the Prues vote for it.
Uh-oh, Prue's got 3 votes now. It's like, what is this? The writer's room of charm during seasons 1 through 3 before they killed her off?
I was going to say, this is gerrymandering in action.
Yes. So, at Buckland's, there's this weird comedy thing where Prime Prue is, like, holding a magazine in front of her face to disguise the fact that there are 2 Prues.
It should really be a magazine with her face on the cover of it.
That would be hilarious. Conservative Prue goes to get the address for Gabriel and then sends the assistant away by telling her to just go photocopy everything. Just literally everything.
God, poor assistant lady.
Okay, so then Prime Prue comes back and is like, why were you so rude to my assistant? And Conservative Prue is like, I was just being a boss. Maybe if you didn't try to be friends with your assistant, you'd be a better boss. And this is not a thing that was previously established.
Well, since when does Prue have an assistant?
Yeah, you're right. Like, literally nothing was established. But I feel like Prue needs to learn to stand up for herself, and also Prue needs to learn to be sexier. Would have been a runner considering this plot. Like, instead of spending so much time establishing the war mortals who are immortal, maybe you could have spent some time establishing what Prue needed to learn from her clones so that this episode was more thematically satisfying.
Maybe you could have cut the Piper does inventory thing and have a thing where her assistant's, like, walking all over her at the beginning of the episode until Mean Prue yells at her. I mean, if you're already ripping off Buffy, you might as well rip off the whole Vampire Willow Percy thing.
Yeah, although that's also kind of ripping off happy endings.
Yes.
With Penny with her terrible assistant.
So, as soon as the Prues are alone, Claire comes back. Or comes in, I suppose.
Yes. She wants an explanation for why Prue was so mean to that woman who tried to kill her yesterday.
Yeah, she's like, the client was very offended at your behavior. How dare you, Prue? The bank's gonna fire you.
Okay, Right, the bank. Also, what exactly did she say?
Prue did.
Yeah.
Claire, your, what would you call her, curator?
Employee. Oh.
Yeah. Would not let me murder her.
How incredibly rude of her. How gauche.
I'm going to call the Better Business Bureau on you. I heard that not infrequently at my old job.
People said they were going to call the Better Business Bureau on you?
Yeah, which okay, so for my old job, I'm not going to get into what I did, but it was, I wasn't working for them. We were a company that did sort of work that was outsourced to us from other companies.
Yeah, so your clients were those other companies, not the people you were dealing with.
Yeah, so it's like, go ahead. You're not our client. Our client didn't feel like dealing with you, so they hired us.
Yeah.
Claire's trying to burst into the office, but Pink Prue is stopping her.
Conservative Prue, yes.
And she's like, look, I already got the customer's home address so I can go apologize to them. And Claire's like, good, well, you better.
Claire's like, that is a great idea. When one of my employees screw up, I definitely want them to show up at the client's home unannounced.
I think Claire might not be very good at her job.
This isn't her job! Is this just a runner in the Charmed universe where the writers don't know what people do for a living?
What is job?
Right? Oh, so, okay. The Prues are gonna split up. Prime Prue is gonna take Claire away to some other place and pretend that she got the address wrong. And she's gonna send Conservative Prue to go to Quake and pick up Horngry Prue. And then, wait,
There's no good way to portmanteau Blue and Prue. I was like, Blue.
Yeah, no.
But then the two of them will just wait for Prime Prue to somehow get rid of Claire so that they can go throw the sword very, very far away. I know. It's not a plot that makes a lot of sense. So, Prime Prue is unnerved by having to deal with herself.
Yes.
Like, Pink Prue is all, you know what, we'll see how the plan goes. And Prime Prue's like, no, I think the plan should just go, you go, hang out with other Prue and my sisters while I handle this. And Pink Prue's like, well, we'll see.
Also, Conservative Prue, Pink Prue, is like, how come you're always so concerned with what your sisters are up to? Maybe let them handle their own problems. What would they ever do without you, the way you keep checking up on them? And Prue's like, well, they're never going to have to be without me, so don't worry about that,
Ooh.
Conservative me. Yeah. But then Claire comes back.
And Prue shoves Conservative Prue behind the door really quickly, and Claire's like, did you change your sweater? And Prue's like, change blindness is a thing. I'm not sure that you'd necessarily notice that.
There's no way she would have really noticed that. Well, I guess maybe if she saw the sweater and was like, wow, that pink sweater doesn't match Prue's coloring. It looks terrible on her. And then a second later she was wearing a black sweater. I guess I could see that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Piper gets a phone call from...
Yes, we do a phone transition. Pink Prue is calling Piper now. Pink Prue called Piper.
And Piper's like, so, am I talking to real Prue, or can I be rude because it's just a clone? And Pink Prue's like, it's just a clone. And Piper's like, okay, have you idiots thought about what's going to happen when you take away Gabriel's sword? And Pink Prue's like, well, I mean, he didn't do anything to our great-aunt, great-great-great-aunt, right? Like, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't like how cavalier the clone Prues are. They seem to have no sense of self-preservation. I guess they're like Meeseeks from Rick and Morty.
Where they're just waiting to die. I mean, weirdly enough...
Existence is pain!
God. Weirdly enough, you know what this reminds me of?
What?
Remember that episode of Sabrina with, like, where she makes herself a guy for,
Yes!
And then he starts freaking out because he didn't want to die. And this was 90s Sabrina, but would have been right at home with, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. 90s Sabrina actually went to some weirdly dark places.
It's just, it did it with a laugh track.
Yeah, because they have the guy freaking out because he's like, you mean I only have 15 minutes before I die? And it's like, laugh track. And then he's like freaking out, and the laugh track's still going. And
Why was I made?
My existence brings up so many questions, which we also will have later in the show when this show does that plot. Which
I'm just going to throw out there. There's another show out there, and I just like the way they handle clones much, much better.
Orphan Black?
No.
Oh. Buffy somehow?
Farscape.
Oh, Farscape. Farscape is clones?
I'm being coy because we haven't gotten there yet.
Oh. Oh, are we going to get Clone Aaron?
No.
Clone John?
Yes.
Or Klon, as he likes to be called. Klon!
So, where were we?
So
where were we even? Oh, right. Piper was being rude to Pink Clone, and then she goes into the kitchen
and sees Blue Clone throwing herself at her chefs.
Okay. So she's like, okay, she has her sweater, her blue cardigan, which is the least sexy garment that exists, a cardigan, but she has it like sexily off her shoulders, and then she's eating a single piece of pasta seductively. Also, pasta, one of the least sexy foods.
Yeah. Oh, come on. It's like she's got a really long, thin penis.
You know, there's a lot of things working against Horngry Prue here, and yet she's doing it. She's bringing the horny.
She's trying so hard, and it's just so not good.
I love she's like, I was just trying the special, but I think it needs more Parmesan.
And then she shoves her she shoves her thumb in her mouth, and it is... Okay, does Shannon Doherty not know what sexy is? Because this is just so bad.
I was more thinking about the poor chef who, like, leans in to put more Parmesan on the pasta, and he's like, I think she means something sexy, but there's no way I don't know what that could possibly mean, so I'm just gonna shave some more Parmesan onto the pasta.
Also, apparently Quake serves buttered noodles. What is this, a restaurant for Abed?
Yeah, it's weird because there's no sauce on the pasta that she's eating.
You know what the pasta could use? Sauce.
Maybe it's an Alfredo and it's just hard to tell.
Or maybe, if they didn't put that much work into the fake food prop because they didn't realize that 30 years from now, two people would be desperately overanalyzing.
Yeah, maybe the prop people were like, we're only going to see it for a second. Why are we putting that much thought into it?
Anyway, Piper is mad at Prue, and she's like, you're not acting like the real Prue. And she's like, I am the part of the real Prue that doesn't get out to play enough. I want to get out to play. And then she, like, strokes Piper's face. And
ugh.
Piper's real freaked out because, it's her sister.
It is freaky. But she says what we already knew. Pink Prue is conservative Prue, and she's horny, angry Prue.
They really don't do a ton with this.
This is an episode of missed potential. It really is.
Like, it's not a bad episode. It's just suffering from going against a bunch of episodes that are really strong thematically.
I mean, my real problem with it is, why would you have an episode that involves a person splitting themselves into their component parts and not have it be about them making some sort of discovery about themselves?
Honestly, they do a better version of this episode later after Prue gets her astral projection, where in her sleep she's been sending her astral form out into the world.
Yes.
Yeah, and her astral form is very uninhibited, and she's doing all of the things Prue wants to do but can't because, she's got this responsibility, which is a way better take on this. I can see kind of what they're going for here. It just doesn't super work.
Yeah.
So, Pink Prue is wandering around. I guess she's trying to head out of the office.
Yeah, she almost gets caught by Prime Prue and Claire, so she has to kind of duck back.
She's in the parking lot.
Yes.
Garage.
Yes. And then Gabriel throws a flashbang grenade at her.
I mean, I get the logic, I guess, which is that if she's blinded, she won't be able to focus her power through her eyes.
Oh. Okay. I didn't even get that that's what he was doing. I was just like...
Well, you might not have got that's what he was doing because it doesn't work.
Well, my thing was, I'm like, that's off theme for you. You have a crystal sword and a flashbang grenade? That's not thematic. But okay, I get it now. He was trying to... Okay. At least now it makes sense to me. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to let it go.
So he's blinded Pink Prue, so she just sort of starts randomly telekinesising, and she kind of throws him back, but he just gets up and stabs her.
And when he stabs her, Prime Prue feels it.
Yes.
And he can tell, after a couple of minutes that it's not real Prue because he doesn't get the power from fake Prue that he expected to get from Prime Prue.
Is that what he's at? I thought he was trying to avenge his honor or something, or does he get... No, I guess he's after her magic.
Yeah, the only way to get back his honor is to take the magic of the person who defeated him.
Except she's dead, so just her relatives.
Yeah. Well, remember, because the magic of the Charmed Ones is inherited.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess...
It is her magic.
Huh.
Yeah.
So, do you think that's why Paige's powers never really manifested until after Prue died?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Huh. Possibly. Yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense.
Although, Piper and her mom were both around at the same... Do you think Piper didn't get her powers until her mom died? Although...
Oh, no. The kids were all manifesting before.
Yeah, and obviously Grams had her telekinesis at the same time Prue had hers.
Yeah, no, she doesn't have her ancestors' powers the way, like, I have my grandmother's pearls. She has her ancestors' powers the way I have my grandmother's eyes.
Yeah. Not literally, of course.
Gomez, take those out of his mouth.
So Warrior Guy's sister's like, did you get it? Did you get her power? And he's like, she has no power. This isn't the real witch. And
actually, he's like, she has no power. He goes really crazy about it.
Yeah, which, I mean, she had power. I mean...
No, I think that the power, when she dies, just goes back into Prue.
I wonder if that means Prue is 3 times stronger after this episode.
Oh, that's a good question.
Honestly, in the first season, at least, I feel like Prue's power is actually less effective than Piper's, because we talk about it as the offensive power, but mostly what she does with it is shove people into walls. Like, she doesn't actually take anyone out with it.
Well, Piper's isn't that great either in the beginning because she doesn't have a lot of control over it.
Yeah, and it's just, this is just a lot less, God, what's the word I'm looking for? Effective than Piper's later explosion power.
I mean, that's true.
Prue's power is offensive, but it's not really a finisher.
None of them really has a finisher power until Piper's able to blow things up.
Well, Paige does get that thing she uses once where she orbs into someone and then makes them explode, which she uses one time and then it never comes up again.
Fun fact, in the X-Men arcade game, that's how you fight if you're Nightcrawler.
Wow.
Because Nightcrawler is one of the characters in the X-Men arcade game, but his power isn't really...
offensive at all?
Definitely not 80s arcade offensive. You just bamf into people.
Wow. Dark.
It is.
It's the reason the X-Men fighting games tend to give Mystique one of those giant guns she was using in the 90s. He's like, her power is cool, but it's not fighting game relevant.
Right.
So, Prue feels herself die, and we cut to the coroner's office where Inspector Andy has been informed that there has been a murder, which is actually his job.
Yeah, but he's been called down to identify the body of the murder victim, and it's Prue. Okay.
I love how bored and not engaged he is until he notices it's Prue.
Yeah, okay, so he's just like going through the personal effects bag, not even looking at the slab, and then when he sees the concert tickets that he gave Prue earlier, he like all of a sudden looks up and sees that Prue is laid out in the morgue, and this is mean, I think. I feel like it's really mean to put Andy through this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then to gaslight him later and be like, oh, must just been a girl who looked like Prue. Don't worry about it. Don't worry that our fingerprints matched and she had tickets that you gave her. It's just coincidence.
Yeah, I feel really bad for Andy. It sort of... The show isn't willing to take him out of the limbo he was in the first couple of episodes, which means that he can't really develop or go forward at all.
Yeah, I think it's a real issue. I really do.
There's a reason Andy doesn't make it out of season 1.
Which is a shame. They could have let him grow. He could have been an interesting character.
Again, like the stuff we saw with early Andy, which I feel like that's also why current Andy is so wooden, because they stopped really giving him stuff.
Okay, so after the truth is out there...
And it
hurts. They should have, instead of him freaking out, they should have had him come around at the end. Or even made it... Okay, so here's how I would have rewritten it.
Mm-hmm.
Made it kind of be a thing where before the spell is up, he's still wavering if he's going to come around or not. So then Prue has to make the decision herself if she's going to tell him or not. She doesn't have the answer. Mm-hmm. But then she decides to tell him, and he does come around, and then he gets, like, really into witchcraft, and he, like, even though he doesn't have the power, he knows all of the history, and he can bring them all of this information that shouldn't logically be in the Book of Shadows, but is when they need it to be, and he could be their, like...
See, I was going in a different direction with him. I was thinking a good way, around it would have been, she tells him, he accepts it, he's super into it, like we saw him be in the first episodes, but he keeps getting himself into situations, like he takes unnecessary risks, and Prue ends up breaking up with him because she's like, this world is too dangerous for you, you can't be a part of this, and as long as we're together, you're going to be too into it. But he keeps on trying to be into it to prove himself, and then he gets killed at the end of season 1.
Okay, yeah, if you were going to kill off Andy, yes. Mine would be if you were going to keep him around.
Oh, like as a long-term character.
Yeah. Yeah, either of those would have been better than, like you said, this limbo they keep him in.
But he sees Prue's body and is sad.
Yes. And then we cut back to Phoebe practicing her boxing.
Yes, she's just beating up the wooden dummy. The doorbell rings. She opens the door and Andy just bursts in.
Well, and he's crying. Max, he's crying. Poor Andy in this episode. He's like, he's so upset, and he's so sad for himself, but he also knows he has to be strong and deliver this news to Phoebe. And Phoebe's like, what color was her sweater? Was it pink? And he's like, yeah.
And she's like, oh, whatever, fine. Prue's dead, whatever. God, Andy, you're being so silly, Andy. And Andy's like, what? Why aren't you reacting? Your sister's dead.
And here's the thing. Even though they're going to gaslight him later and be like, oh, it's just someone who looked a lot like Prue, there's no way for Phoebe to know that. Phoebe needs to be reacting differently to this news.
I do love how, like, she's freaking out at first, too, because, dead sister, but she just focuses on the sweater, and then as soon as he says the word pink, she's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, he's like, what is wrong with you? And she's like, well, I didn't really get along with Prue that well. And then Horngry Prue comes in the back, and it is like, hey, Andy, nice tie. Want a screw?
And Andy's like, what? And then real Prue comes in, and Piper just freezes him. And, they have a little debriefing where Prue's like, yeah, I felt myself die, so...
Yeah.
It's not great.
It's messed up.
Like, And Piper's like, you know what? We'll just deal... Yeah, you felt yourself die, whatever. We'll deal with that later.
I mean, to be fair, she's like, one crisis at a time.
Yeah.
You get out of here so Andy doesn't see two Prues, even though he already saw dead Prue, and now he sees a live Prue.
And he's like, how can this be? You were dead. I saw you. You were on a slab. And Piper's like, well, you know how they say everyone has a twin? And Andy's like, what? What?
Like that. Here's the thing. There's no good lie for this. I can't think of a single good lie for what he could have seen. Really, the only answer is to tell him the truth. But they don't. They just tell him he's crazy and send him away, which is so unfair to Andy.
Yeah. Prue's like, Blue Prue, Horngry Prue is like, hey, Andy, if you're feeling less like, a crazy loner weirdo later, we can bang it out. But as for right now, I think you should leave until you stop being a crazy loner weirdo.
Now, I like that Andy is kind of clued in that something is off. So he asks Horngry Prue, if she thought about the concert. And Horngry Prue is like, oh, did you get the tickets? Because, of course, she doesn't know that he gave the tickets to conservative Prue. So he's like, yeah, I did. And then leaves because he knows something's up, but he has no context for what it could possibly be because who would?
How do you not know they're witches yet?
Well, I mean, even if you knew they were witches, I feel like you wouldn't necessarily jump to what actually happened. It's pretty weird.
It is, but you fought a Wendigo with them.
I know.
You fought a Wendigo. It seems like this should be a conversation you should be able to have. But
I mean, okay, so I would like it so much more. I'm going to pitch another rewrite now. Because they've done a little bit of Andy as Fox Mulder. I would like it more if they just really leaned into it, okay? If he just went like full Mulder and was like, there are witches! And he was like having his spreadsheets and his Pepe de Silvia boards down at the station, and everybody was like, there goes Spooky Trudeau again. And
I think that they should make him both Mulder and Rickety Cricket from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, we're just, because he's hanging out with them, just the terrible things that keep happening to him, like, just hanging out with them, being in their orbit just ruins his life to a greater and greater extent every time he's near them.
Yeah. By the end of season 1, he's basically like a head on a skateboard who like lives in their house and they have to feed him grape juice with a straw.
Poor Andy. I'm just saying, there's so many ways they could have gone with him, and instead they chose to do nothing.
As Andy leaves, we see the sister watching the house and,
Yeah, Gabriel's sister.
Yes. I'm sorry, there are too many sisters.
There are a lot of sisters. But back in the manor, Horngry Prue is like, what are we going to do now? Now there's only 2 of us, and there needs to be 3 of us. So she suggests that Prue cast the spell again, and Prue's like, yeah, no, that didn't go well. I'm not happy with the way that worked out.
I mean, honestly, just cast the spell like 4 times and then telekinetically throw him into space.
Do you remember the Michael Keaton movie Multiplicity?
I remember it existing. I don't think I actually saw it.
So he like clones himself and then has himself like do all of the drudge work he doesn't want to do, like go to work and mow the yard, and then like the prime him just gets to enjoy life. It's much like that episode of Gravity Falls, and also like the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror that was based on it.
Yeah.
But then there's the clones decide that they want someone to do all the work. They don't want to be doing all the work. So they make another clone, but they explain it's like making a copy of a copy. So that clone is a little off. Like Paper Jam.
Like Paper Jam Dipper?
Yes.
Or that one episode of Futurama where Bender has that machine that makes smaller versions of himself. Like it copies him, but
Yes. Well, I was just thinking I would have enjoyed it if Horngry Prue had gone to do the spell since Prime Prue won't do it, and then instead of creating, more Prues, it had created a very angry Prue and a very horny Prue, and then Horngry Prue.
And it just keeps going like that.
Yeah.
I thought you just wanted to see Paper Jam Prue.
Oh, okay. Horngry Prue realizes that
Gabriel has a weird burning passion for his sister, so that's the in.
Well, I mean, so because she doesn't have any of the conservative aspects of Prue, she can come up with the really evil plan, which is just take the thing he loves and threaten it until he gives us the sword.
Yeah. I don't know why she thinks he likes his sister that much.
Yeah, we've seen no evidence of that.
They had one interaction where, she was in a room with him and he didn't seem to actively hate her.
Yeah, it's definitely a leap.
So we cut to the fancy house where Gabriel and his sister are, and his sister's leaning on him and she's like, hey, I saw one of them leaving the restaurant and I saw the other one in the house.
She's leaning really close to him for siblings.
Have you read A Song of Ice and Fire?
Yeah. Anyway, she says that she changed her mind. They should attack them in the manor, but they should do it at night when the girls are asleep and therefore will definitely be helpless.
Why don't more demons do that?
Well, it doesn't go well for them.
Yeah, but I mean, later in the show, demons just kind of show up when they're hanging out in the sunroom and attack them. Just show up at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, they probably are going to be less effective at night. Back at the manor, Piper and Phoebe go to talk to Prue. And again, look, I can't get over how rude they are to the clones. I really can't. They go into the room where Prue and Horngry Prue are, and they're like, we need to talk to our sister. Our real sister in private.
It's important. Sister stuff. Like, she is essentially also your sister. You know that, right?
Right?
I mean, we'll get into it. Speaking of creating, men for brief personal use, this show actually does that a couple of times.
I know, I'm aware.
And it just raises a whole host of super uncomfortable questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's a reason you only see this sort of thing in shows with female leads, because it becomes super obvious how horrifying it is.
Yeah, I mean, once you swap the genders, it's like, oh wait, this is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just see anything where a guy builds himself a robot wife.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's a sexism thing, where men have, like, the robot girlfriend, whereas women just magically create dudes. It's like your thing with time travel.
Right, where men tend to time travel through science in fiction, and women tend to time travel through magic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a thing. Now that I've said it, you're going to see it everywhere.
Yeah.
So, the reason that Piper and Phoebe wanted to corner Prue is to tell her that her plan of going with Horngry Prue to Gabriel's house and threatening his sister is a terrible plan.
I mean, honestly, just forcing a confrontation isn't the worst idea in the world.
I know, their plan is to just hide. And their point is you don't want to go attack him on his home turf, and I get that. But also, you don't want to let him choose the time of the engagement.
Yeah.
So, they're better off going and maybe doing a little bit of recon, and then...
Or, if you're gonna stay home, just stay home and layer the house in protective spells.
What's that?
God.
They, never cast protective spells.
So,
Horngry Prue hears this discussion through the door, even though she's left, and she decides that the thing she has to do is go attack Gabriel by herself.
Yeah, she wants to protect her real sisters and the real Prue, because her real sisters need the real Prue, and since she is the real Prue, she has the same protectiveness over them, and...
that's why we had the moment earlier where she was like, why are you always checking up on your sisters? They had to establish how protective Prue is of her sisters because they've never established that before in this show.
I mean...
I guess it's a little bit. But only the way that they're all protective of each other. Not like...
I don't know, I feel like that is sort of a through line in the show, at least early on. It's part of why Prue doesn't really trust her sisters.
Because she's the adult, because she had to raise them, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Gramps was not a great person.
Well, I mean, she was one older woman who just lost her daughter and had to take care of 3 little girls. It's hard.
Yeah.
I have a lot of sympathy for Grams.
That is true. God, I want a Gram show. I'm so excited for the next episode.
I know. Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes.
Hungry Prue runs off.
And the 3 sisters realize that, oops, she overheard everything, and oops, she's going to go do Prue's plan because,
They decide they have to go stop her, and I know I've been all like, why are they being so mean to the clones? Because really, why are they being so mean to the clones? But do they have to go stop her? I mean, best case scenario, it works, and they're dead. Gabriel and his sister are dead. Worst case scenario, she dies, and you already hate her, so...
Well, I guess Prue probably doesn't want to feel herself die again.
I mean, you probably were going to anyway.
Yeah. I can't imagine the uncreation feeling great if just the task lapses. Does it feel good then? Or
I don't know. Anyway, over at Gabriel's house, they have grabbed... Horngry Prue has grabbed his sister and stuffed her into an Iron Maiden.
She's got a real Elizabeth Banks quality to her, the sister.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah, like a less sarcastic Elizabeth Banks.
I do love that Horngry Prue is slowly crushing her in it, and Gabriel draws his sword and she's like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna crush her faster, dude."
Yeah, she's got her telekinesis, so she's slowly closing the Iron Maiden with her telekinesis.
She's pretty good with it. I feel like Prue kind of...
She's showing a lot of control.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Prue was doing that stuff when she was cleaning yesterday. Prue seems better with her powers when she's not using them for, like, demon fighting purposes.
Maybe she's better with, like, fine manipulation than, like, throwing things and punching things. I think based on what we've seen, that might be the case.
So, Gabriel's like, look, I'm gonna kill you no matter what, but if you let my sister go, I'll make it, quick and painless for you and for the real Prue.
He realizes that this is not the real Prue.
Yeah, and, because why would it be the real Prue? Why would you send the real Prue into,
Yeah.
Well, he says I'll make it quick and painless if she lets his sister go, and she's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
And so then he pulls a Keanu Reeves from Speed, right? Shoot the hostage. Or in this case, throw a sword through the hostage.
Which, that seems unnecessary, dude. You probably could have just thrown it at Prue, as long as you're throwing it at...
Yeah, you probably would have hit her.
Oh.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like this plot would have worked better if she was, like, his lover instead of his sister, because that was the vibe they had anyway, so...
Yeah, that would have been better. Anyway, in the car on the way to Gabriel's house, the sisters, Prue, feels Horngry Prue die.
Yes.
So I guess they turn around, because they're like, well, no point in sacrificing ourselves.
Back to the house.
Yes.
So, back at the house, Phoebe's talking about how this guy can't be killed by the weapons of man, but, could they just use a magic weapon on him?
Or, like, a giant rocket launcher?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a judge situation.
But instead, Phoebe's like, wait, isn't the crystal sword not a weapon of man? Can't we just kill him with his own sword?
Which, yes, thank you, Phoebe, for, saying the thing anyone who's ever played D&D would think of immediately.
Yeah.
Also, like, your witches, is it that unlikely that you could summon a, magical weapon of some kind?
Well, they're untrained witches. They only have, like, their natural instincts. They don't have, book learning.
Book of Shadows learning.
Yeah.
What would have been, I think, I mean, it wouldn't be set up or really supported by the narrative at all, but they should have killed Gabriel with Grimes' statue.
I mean, it would have been more interesting, I think, than what we see.
Also, if you can't be killed by any weapon forged by man, putting aside
I am no man.
Yes, putting the I am no man thing aside, couldn't they kill him with something that's not a weapon? Could they hit him with a car? It's not a weapon.
Interesting theory.
I'm just saying, you have options.
So, Prue decides that Phoebe's plan is a good plan. She's so excited about this good plan that she gives Phoebe a hug, and when she does, Phoebe has a vision of Gabriel throwing a flashbang through their window and jumping in, and is like, oh, it's go time. It's go time.
It's nice of her premonition to actually do it before stuff starts happening for once.
Yeah, no, seriously, the way her premonitions usually go, she would get that premonition, and then immediately it would happen.
Yeah, the flashbang would come right through the... Remember when she had the premonition of Javna grabbing her literally seconds before he grabbed her?
Yeah, her premonition's kind of a jerk sometimes.
Meanwhile, Andy's doing some high-quality corpse staring.
Yeah, he's at the morgue, and he's like, okay, this is definitely Prue. We took her fingerprints. It's Prue's fingerprints. I'm staring at her face. It's definitely her face.
The morgue guy is so honked off at Andy.
Well, the morgue guy doesn't know that Andy has already seen Prue alive. He's like, I ran the records like you asked me to. I went through everything. It's definitely this girl, Prue. I don't know why you keep questioning me.
Do you know how underfunded morgues are? Do you know how much time and resources you're taking away from other dead people?
Although I think they probably wanted to establish, for those of you in the audience who don't know, that it's impossible, even if they were twins, that they would have the same fingerprints. So this is definitely Prue, and there's literally no mortal explanation for this being Prue. I think that might have been the real reason for that scene.
Oh, I'm sure it was, but it also seems kind of extra and unnecessary.
I know, you're right. Like, why have an extra scene convincing Andy that there's no good explanation for this if you're just going to not give him an explanation and tell him he's losing it?
Yeah.
Yeah. At the Manor, it's time for the fight scene to happen. I love Prue put on sunglasses so that when the flashbang came through the window, she didn't actually get blinded?
Would that work?
No.
Like,
I mean, I don't know, but no.
I can't imagine it would. So he bursts into the living room, and what was his plan if no one was in the living room? I mean, I guess he was probably waiting until he saw a figure, but there are other...
Yeah, Prue was in the living room, so I think he was probably like looking through the window or something.
So the room is full of smoke, and he sees a figure moving, and he throws the sword into it.
But it's not a person, it's the fighting dummy that Phoebe bought. Oh.
So Piper freezes him, and then Phoebe kicks him out of being frozen, and Prue's like, you better summon your sword, dude. And he's like, I am going to summon my sword, and then I'm going to kill you. And as he's summoning it, she just kind of flips it around, and he's like, oh no, my one weakness, getting stabbed in the chest.
Yeah, so when he summons the sword, instead of catching the hilt, the blade goes into his chest. Although, not to be a nitpicker, but shouldn't the blade have gone into his hand?
Yes. Also, why didn't they just leave him frozen?
And just stab him?
Yeah. It seems like there was a bunch of unnecessary steps there so that,
I mean, it makes sense.
Why didn't they just go to his house, why didn't they just go to his house, have Piper freeze him, and then stab him with the sword?
I mean, it makes sense if, like, there was a step in there where he had to do it himself.
Yeah.
We didn't get that step, but I'm willing to make the leap that was a thing. So...
It worked. We can't complain about it.
Yeah. So, doorbell rings, and it is Andy, who is still very upset about this whole Prue still being alive thing. Prue's like, Andy, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. What's wrong with you? And he's like, oh, what's wrong with me? Like, poor Andy.
Yeah, he's like, I'm taking you to the morgue whether you want to go or not. And
I'm going to make you stand next to this corpse, and I'm going to stare at your identical faces until this makes sense. And poor Andy, because, of course, the mission is complete, so when Prue gets to the morgue and Andy opens up the drawer, there's nothing in it except the pink sweater.
This was really good timing on his part.
Well, really poor timing.
Okay, so I do like that Prue points out that they drove in complete and total silence.
Yes, they did the thing where they're like, I'll tell you where we're going, and then they open up the door of the morgue, and he's like, we're going to the morgue, but she actually acknowledged.
She's like, we were sitting in silence for 20 minutes, Andy. What's going on?
And as much as I hate what they're doing to Andy in this episode, I do appreciate that Prue doesn't try to explain anything. She's just like, I don't know what you want me to say, Andy. What do you want me to say?
Poor Andy.
I know, right?
Meanwhile, the newspaper is reporting on Helena's death.
Yeah, and they say that the only thing near her was a lone blue sweater.
Okay. Do you think Claire has any questions? Because if I was Claire, I would be kind of suspicious of Prue.
Well, okay, last week somebody went to Prue's house for a dinner party and then went mad. And this week she tried to get Prue to take a new client on, and that client got murdered mysteriously. Yeah, I might have some questions if I were Claire.
I would think I would stop yelling at Prue so much if I was Claire.
I mean, to be fair, my first question if I was Claire would be, why am I here at the auction house when I'm a banker?
So they're all debriefing after, the episode's events. Piper's like, well, that wraps up inventory. Barely a subplot.
I mean, it really wasn't even a subplot.
It was something that gets mentioned like 3 times over the course of the episode, which I guess adds flavor, but...
Yeah.
Seems weird.
They do like a real sisterly thing where this is supposed to be Prue acknowledging that she can't do everything herself. I feel like that should have been a stronger through line. I know I've said a lot of things should have been stronger through lines, but that's just the way this episode is.
It feels like this episode had a lot of really good plot hooks and just kind of didn't use any of them.
Well, the theme that they were going for here was Prue tries to do everything herself. Mm-hmm. And to the extent that she creates more of herself rather than rely on her sisters, and then in the end, her sisters are the ones who come through for her. Like, saying that out loud, that sounds good, but that's not really the way it was emphasized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, also, she bought a gift basket for her assistant for,
Her assistant?
Because conservative Prue was such a huge jerk to her.
Oh, no, I'm just still flummoxed that she exists.
Well... Later in the show, when Phoebe becomes Ask Phoebe, Like, she has an assistant, but only for personal stuff.
Well, I think that's just because Phoebe's a terrible boss.
Hmm.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Last scene.
So Andy has started a giant ass file on Prue, which just has, like, all of the murder scenes she's shown up at, and all of the weird stuff, that feather she stole from the museum.
It's his X file, or his H file, as it were. He also has a newspaper clipping, or like a magazine clipping, it's like from Parade magazine, about witchcraft. So, you know,
You fought a Wendigo together.
You have all the pieces. What are we doing here?
She's... I know I bring this up so often, but she telekinetically threw a dessert cart at you.
She telekinetically popped your airbag in your face.
Like...
Andy, what are you doing?
Pull a Harvey Kinkle at the end of season 4 of Sabrina.
Are we going to talk about the fact that you're a witch?
Yeah.
Ugh, I'm so sad Sabrina got more seasons, only because that was such a perfect last line of the series.
Yeah.
Ugh. Oh well.
Oh well.
That's the end of this episode of Charmed.
We were kind of rough on it, but I think that's mostly because it's such unfulfilled potential.
Yes, it could have been, like, it was a rewrite away from being a truly great episode.
And it's in the midst of a bunch of really good episodes.
Yeah, it is.
Speaking of...
Yes, next time we're going to be doing episode 17 of season 1, that 70s episode.
Grams.
The Netflix description is, after a run-in with a demon who's responsible for the death of the sister's mother, Prue, Piper, and Phoebe are transported back to the 1970s.
Wait, really? That happens here?
Yeah.
I thought that didn't happen until later. Because isn't that when they meet...
I believe that the first time they meet him, it's just for like a second and it's not really delved into. And then there's like a longer episode with him.
Okay, because I thought that the episode where they meet Sam, their mother's white lighter, and Paige's dad, I thought that was the episode where they dealt with the demon because...
Yeah, I don't think they really deal with him here. I think he's just like an impetus in this episode, if I remember it correctly. But it's been a couple of years since I did a Charmed rewatch, so... Yeah,
it has been a while since I watched the... Charmed, I guess, in general. So I think that'll bring us to our segments.
Yeah, okay, so our segments.
All right, so our first segment, Premonitions, where we look into the future or past and see which actors from this episode are famous, will become famous, or were famous at some point.
I don't have anything. Do you have anything?
I also had nothing. I don't think anyone from this was ever in anything.
Yeah, we should skip over that segment this week.
Well, I mean,
okay.
It's not like Phoebe always has premonitions.
That's true.
Which will bring us to our second power in our pack, time freeze. What specifically dated this episode?
Okay, I think I know what you're going to say, so I'm going to say something different.
All right.
When Andy shows up and is like, Prue, but I just saw you dead. Prue says, well, you know how they say everyone has a twin somewhere? Mm-hmm. I feel like that was a plot in a lot of shows in like the 80s and the 90s.
Escape from Witch Mountain.
Yeah, I feel like everybody has a duplicate who's somehow completely unrelated to them was a thing that pop culture used to do and like Quicksand has stopped doing.
Are we going to talk about the whole Danny Gonzalez talking about Paul Zimmer thing where that guy tried to start a new social media thing pretending to be someone else and just pretended that, you know...
He just pretended he was an entirely different guy named Troy Becker?
Yeah.
I mean, no, but...
Yeah.
Dang.
My thing is definitely the villain's hair, which... It's a really, really era-specific mullet. I don't know if mullets are making a comeback now because no one has good access to barbers.
It's like a permed mullet. It's terrible.
But it's very era-specifically terrible.
Yes, it's definitely a 90s mullet, not like an 80s mullet.
Yeah. And that will bring us to the last power in our pack, telekinesis. What genuinely moved you this episode?
So for me, it's the moment where you see Horngry Prue overhearing the sisters' conversation and deciding that she's going to go and sacrifice herself to take down the villain and save everybody else.
Oh, that was going to be mine.
Oh.
Because I guess it's the most emotionally resonant moment in the episode. But yeah, the fact that she's like, okay, since I'm not a real person, like, I'm expendable.
At least I can do this.
For the people I love.
Yeah.
Which, God.
I really feel like this. I really feel like the sisters are not as good to the clones as they should be. They give the clones a raw deal here.
Keep that in mind for later in this series, how the sisters think about other people, especially magically created people.
Yeah.
And I guess that'll about do it for this week.
Yeah, I guess that will. Our show is partially listener supported. If you want to be one of the supporters, you can head to our website, www.welcometotelevision.net, and click on our Patreon link. We'd like to thank our current $5 and above patrons, Beryl, Patricia, Sam, Cassidy, Alex, Alicia, Ryan, Maricruz, Rosa, Javier, and Benjamin.
If you'd like to support the show in other ways, you could always rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find the show.
If you want to talk about this episode, or any episode of any television show, you should join our Facebook group, Welcome to Television.
We can also be contacted at I Love TV Zines on Twitter or ilovetelevisionzines@gmail.com.
So until next time, I'm Tina.
And I'm Max.
And this has been Welcome to the Halliwell Manor.